Welcome back to another College Chats podcast. Well, folks, we made it through those dark days without the beautiful game, and we have college football this week. So to start our sixth season of this podcast, we kick off the 2024 season with a very special guest. But first, we're the Chaps. I'm George. I'm joined by the dynamic duo, Ollie and Alex. How are you both?
Yeah, doing really well. I'm super excited that it's the start of the college football season. Don't listen to anyone who tells you that week one is the official start of the college football season because week zero is here. There's great games, there's excitement, there's history to be made with college game day. There's all manners of great stuff to look forward to, and yeah, I'm beyond excited to talk about some of that and some of the other bits and pieces to that.
I don't know why Ollie's talking about the normal things. You know, a team playing in week zero has already missed their flight to Hawaii. A fan base that's playing in week zero has already threatened to do harm to one of ESPN's top personalities in Dublin. College football is really back, and I love this game.
It really is. But when this team kicks off the season next Thursday, our guest will be the epicenter of a new season in the Big 12. Our guest is enjoying a 37-year career, if my math is correct, as a football coach, which has stopped at Wisconsin Whitewater, Wisconsin, Nebraska Omaha, Nebraska, Buffalo, and I think it's fair to say has transformed the fortunes of the Kansas Jayhawks. So much so that the Jayhawks are ranked 22nd in the AP preseason poll, but I'm sure you won't thank me for bringing that up. So it's truly awesome to welcome Coach Lance Leipold. Coach, hi, welcome. How is life treating you in Lawrence?
Well, guys, hello and thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with you guys. It truly is an honor, and we're about 18 practices into fall camp, and like you said, we're about 8 days away from kickoff, and we're getting at that point where it's an exciting time and time for us to get ready to play somebody else.
Yeah, I think we're all just so super excited for the season to kick off. We've got some limited time with you, so we're going to jump straight into it. And really, how this conversation came about, Coach, was we talked about college football being played in let's call it Europe. We've got, as Ollie said, we've got a game in Dublin this weekend, and I know you've expressed some ideas and some thoughts about getting the Jayhawks across. So I guess as a starter for this conversation, how aware are the people of Kansas, the school, the program, the players, the staff? How aware are they of the interest of college football outside of the US?
I probably couldn't give the greatest answer of how much knowledge there is. I just think they're aware of, like, the game that's going to be played in Ireland and the ones that have been played there in years past. We've expressed our interest administratively. I have expressed my desire as the head coach to our administrators to try to get, if there's a chance for that. Now, next year, Kansas State and Iowa State will be the two people going. So I don't know if Kansas is going to be like another Kansas school would be up there. So I've kind of looked at it and I think it is. And if I could just back up just quickly, George, for, kind of even when I reached out to you after hearing a couple of your interviews on American Sports Talk Radio with some people, is back when I was a graduate assistant, you'd mentioned those times through my career at the University of Wisconsin, we played a game in Tokyo, Japan, and it was a regular season game, but that was played in December. And I just thought from that time on, cultural experience, timing, excitement. Now, it does take away from a game here in the States, but I still believe in experiences for our young men. And so with that, I just think, again, as things kind of time up and you look what the NFL keeps doing, not just as they've started games in London and then keeps branching out, I think college football, the way we're evolving to that model, is a great time for a place like Kansas to try to explore this even further.
I think it is, and I think we'll all agree on this call that we've seen such an explosion of interest in college football, certainly over the last 3 or 4 years since the pandemic. I think it's a reasonable thing to say on the back of the success of the NFL. You touched a little bit on the benefits to the school, the program, the players in getting overseas. Now, maybe just want to expand a little bit on that. it was noticeable across the SEC media days, and Brian Kelly of LSU was talking about his times when he came across to Ireland. And there was a consistent theme from the LSU team that were there about the brand and getting the brand outside of the US. I guess that's twofold, coach. It's from a kind of, there's a financial benefit to it, but there's also a recruitment benefit to it. So just in terms of the experience for the players and the recruitment and branding, how important is it to a school like Kansas to be able to get that story across?
Extremely important. You mentioned about some, our preseason kind of, getting noticed, being ranked. We finished last year being ranked. This was a program that, 3 years ago would probably never have been mentioned on your podcast for probably 10 years because this place has struggled for a long time. And so when you're trying to make a name and you're trying to increase, we have a great brand, we have a great logo and it's mainly based off the success of our basketball program and especially in where college football, where it's going here in the United States as far as benefits to a university and athletic department and those things. I think we have to look at every opportunity to broaden our fan bases, our experience. We have a great university, a great alumni, and again, a great research university. And I also think it's one that our fan base would travel. And as probably all three of you know, is that in many of our other sports, smaller rosters in that, they take a lot of international trips. And I think as this kind of grows and we're looking at TVIs and other ways for broadcasting, again, for us to do that. And then again, when those eyes of for us, high school players and potential recruits, and really even potential transfers, it's an opportunity for us to better our football program.
You speak about bettering your football program, and I think that's a obviously incredibly important thing. I love that you talk about giving your athletes experiences and about building these young guys up. Like as a coach myself, that's something that is incredibly important to me with the athletes that I work with, and I love to see that that's still held as a belief by people at the top level of college sport. But we spoke about bettering the program, and one of the big benefits, one of the big changes that's come into the Kansas program is the new stadium that you're going to move into next year. I don't want to look too far ahead because I know as coaches we don't like talking about things that aren't this season. But how excited are you to get into that new stadium and get going once this season is finished?
Extremely excited. It's like you said, can't get too far ahead. Our players have been, throughout really since last January when they returned to campus, displaced in many ways as a lot of construction was going on. We've been able to move back into our football facilities here. They've redone our meeting rooms and other things that have really benefited our players. But the actual stadium, 2/3 of it will be completed for next season. And that's a $450 million investment, which is really unheard of, especially in our era right now, dealing with name, image, and likeness. For us to have this type of commitment from our administration is really important. And really the way it's starting to come up and take place, it's going to be neat. I think they've almost taken some of the things that may happen over by you in soccer stadiums and that, just the look of it and what you can add to game day experiences with a light show and things like that is going to make it really special. But guys, we get this really good opportunity. We're going to play our first two games at a soccer stadium here in the state, Sporting KC, for the first two, but then we get to play our other four conference games at the two-time defending Super Bowl champs, Arrowhead Stadium of the Kansas City Chiefs. And I think that's also going to be, as we keep talking about experiences, a pretty neat experience for these for our team and our 30 seniors.
Mm-hmm. So just on that, obviously playing at different venues for your home venues, I imagine playing at Arrowhead doesn't require that much of a change in terms of things that you do. It's a purpose-built football stadium. But going and playing at the soccer stadium in Kansas City, how is that going to change? Have you been and visited the site? Are your athletes going to go and visit the site? Like we see when teams come over and play in the soccer stadiums here, it does change. The field doesn't look quite right on the soccer field. Like it is different. So how's that going to change your preparation for those games?
We did get to Children's Mercy Park, the soccer stadium, in our first week of practice. That was the one time that we were allowed to go practice, and yeah, it look wise, it may look a little different. It's really unique, and for everybody that'd be listening, like our stadium was so old and things that there used to be a track around it, and they took the track out, so there was a lot of space on the sidelines with turf. So I think we have that type of space, and I think we'll see that in those first two games. I think when you really get down to it, though, it's more sight lines from the press box for coaching communication and space in those that are maybe the challenges, and the locker room spaces pre-game and halftime that we have to work through. Now, I do think we had the opportunity last year when we played in a bowl game in Phoenix, Arizona. We played at the baseball stadium of the Arizona Diamondbacks, and a baseball stadium, a clubhouse, different setup, of course, than a space of a locker room. And really, when you look at NFL teams, when they have a smaller roster, they kind of have an auxiliary locker room for things for overflow. So I think when you go on the road, you kind of get the visitors' locker rooms and aren't always the best anyway. So we'll adapt. And as we kind of say to our staff and to our team, if we make it a big deal or a distraction, it'll definitely become one. But if we can handle it and take these things to our advantage, I think it's going to be really exciting. The soccer stadium only is going to hold about 20,000 people, but as much like other designs, it has the overhang over the stands, the noise and the music and the other things that you want will give it a lot bigger feel. And I think it's going to be a pretty exciting environment for our guys.
I think something that's going to be a pretty exciting environment this year is the Big 12 conference itself, and Kansas Jayhawk football program is growing. The excitement around that program is growing. And I want to talk about the Big 12 and Kansas football and this year very shortly, but it wouldn't be an episode of our podcast, particularly for myself, without talking about the MAC, because I absolutely love the MAC. I love midweek action. We all do on this podcast. Obviously, your time at Buffalo, George mentioned in the introduction, was hugely successful. You were a part of some great Bulls programs, had some great individual players as well. How, as you look back at it now, how does your time there, the experiences that you had at Buffalo, how did they prepare you for the leap up to the Power 5 level when you took the Kansas job?
Well, again, I guess for your listeners, great question. And in its own way, I loved Maction myself, except the first year when we played 4 games in 18 days. I thought that was a little stressful, but home games in Maction are really good. It's the away one sometimes when you're like a 3-hour bus trip and you get home at about 5 a.m, but all good. I think, guys, my career had a chance to be at all different levels: Division I, Division II, Division III, the group of 5 in the MAC to the Power 5 and now Power 4. And I think all those have been unique. I think what the job at Buffalo taught me a couple things. One is as being a head coach from the Division III ranks, just the amount of staff and resources to climb up to start. But then when you go to a power conference school, you have more people, more accessibility to get more things done, and you can really diversify the cells and divide so many tasks and not wear quite as many hats as you had to at the other jobs. The other part I think it learned, probably especially a program like this, was the patience and what it was going to take to build a roster and build a program and stay the course. I took over at my alma mater as a Division III coach. It had been winning, and we were playing at a good level. We were able to take it up a notch and maintain success. But going through 2 and 10 seasons are stressful, and it takes patience. And you got to stick with the plan, and you got to believe in it. You got to believe in your coaches, and you got to find the right things to do. And I think that really helped us. And the other thing is, we took this job over in May, like May 1st, which is very uncommon in coaching changes here in the United States. As you guys well know, we missed spring football. So it was learning on the fly about what we really had. All those things, I think, kind of helped us along the way. And, this isn't a so-called blue blood. We're a blue blood basketball program, but not a football. We don't have the resources and the fan base in a stadium of a Texas or Oklahoma when they were in the Big 12. So you've got to learn to still be able to compete at a level against those people with a few less resources. And I think our time in the MAC definitely helped us.
As much as we're all looking forward to the new college football season, this season ahead is probably going to be unprecedented in many ways. Your league looks different. You've got new teams to compete against, as well as a new structure for the college football playoff at the end of the season, where it'll be interesting to see how coaches try to tackle that. This is a subject that really fascinates me. As a head coach, how do you prepare for a season like this where there's so much change kind of forced upon you?
Yes, we're trying to make the game better. We're trying to make it fit in time slots better with new timing rules, and we've increased our communication where we can talk to the player now during the court, one person in the huddle like the NFL. We're going to get tablets on the sideline that hopefully makes the game even more excitable through adjustments. But yeah, as you alluded to, when you start talking about all the realignment that has gone on in at least the Power Four conferences now, it's made it definitely different and challenging for us. Like when I first couple of years of getting this job, there were 10 teams in the Big 12. Okay, so the numbers of these conferences in the names don't matter anymore. But we would play everybody, and you could kind of see the matchups. Well, now. When you look at our schedule this year, George, especially in the conference, we open up with West Virginia. We didn't play them last year. Then we have TCU. We didn't play them last year. Then we have then we go to Arizona State and Houston. One's a new member and the other one we didn't play. And then later in the year, we have Colorado yet and Baylor, and we didn't play them. So 6 of our games of our 9 were against people we didn't even play last year, and half of those were in the conference. So you're not going to get that yearly comparison or thinking about what you have in the matchup of the breakdown. Plus, with the transfer portal, these rosters can look so significantly different anyway. It's going to be interesting. And for us, I think the other thing we have to look at, I think those of us that are in the middle of the United States, we kind of sit in a decent spot. But for some of these, teams, are going to be changing time zones quite frequently. Yeah. When do you kick off the next week? How does your team handle those things? I think there's a lot of interesting things that make it unique and challenging. But like you also said, a lot of games are going to matter all the way through. And when you have a chance to make a playoff like before, I think all these things are going to add to the excitement of college football.
Yeah. Sorry, AC, after you.
I was about to say, you spoke on those road trips and some of the craziness that's going on right now for certain teams. But for you, what's the one road trip that you're looking forward to this year? And as a sort of second bit on that, where's the best place you've coached in terms of atmosphere that isn't Kansas itself? Because I know, there's nowhere better than where you are right now.
Yeah. I've been asked, for some reason, like 3 times in the last week about which place I'm really going to look forward to playing. It's kind of interesting. I kind of, much like why I'm probably, even with you guys now, I like the new experiences, and I've never been to Provo, Utah to play against BYU. We played them last year. Excuse me. Arizona State seems intriguing, but that's because we're new, not because of anything extra special. But so that's the way I like looking at it, as far as something that's new along the way. And I think that's neat for our players as well. Environments, boy, way back, as I mentioned, when I was a graduate, the University of Wisconsin has its own unique atmosphere of that is there for a lot of different reasons. And it's the band, it's the student section, and then good football that, I had a chance to be a part when Barry Alvarez really built that program. On the road, I was a graduate assistant one of the first years that they closed the Horseshoe at Ohio State. But I tell you, the best atmosphere, I mean, scenically and everything you go to, I've been at 2 Rose Bowls, and January 1st in Pasadena is truly special, like they say. But the loudest, best, and most memorable, I guess, game that I was a part of was at the University of Nebraska playing Notre Dame. I don't remember a game being in a press box where it was so noisy the majority of the game, especially in the first quarter, that you couldn't hear the coaches talking on the sideline. It was an atmosphere I'll always remember.
Coach, we've used the word excited quite a few times during this conversation for the football season itself, the changes that are coming. But there's a lot of excitement, as we said before, around the Jayhawks. And I think it's fair to say that is largely in part because of the transformational impact you've had since you've been at the program. You took over an 0-9 team, admittedly, in coming off of the COVID year, which was difficult for everyone. And that first year in charge, 2 wins and then 6 wins, and then last year that 9-win season, the best season in the best part of 2 decades for Kansas football. There's now a lot of, it feels like anyway, from outside, there feels like there's a lot of expectations on the program. There's a lot of expectations on the returning players that come back. And you return a hell of a lot of talent to that team this year. So the expectations from the outside looking in are somewhat justified. How do you balance I guess it's a difficult balancing act between the confidence that last season gives you and the expectations that are placed externally and maybe internally as well, you can tell us, coming into the 2024 season?
Great question. And I've tried to address it a few times, and it's probably one of the bigger tests that I'll have as a head coach about how a team handles this season, because I've always been one that's kind of stay focused ahead, keep the pedal down and do it. But this program had suffered for so long and struggled, this fan base of trying to win. We need to be confident. We need to be proud. We need to have a little swagger to us, because darn it, it's hard to do at a place like this. And so with that, but we cannot let that become complacency and let it think that that's going to take care of games this year, because right now, when you're the hunter, you can keep chasing people all the time. And I can admit that I know there's been some football teams that came into Lawrence, Kansas pretty flat and just figured they'll show up and it would take care of itself. Well, that's not going to be the case anymore. And we're going to get a better effort. We're going to get a more focus. Now you have a chance to knock off a ranked team when you beat a Kansas team right now early in the year. So we have to be ready for that and answer that challenge. But I told our team, early on, guys, that when we were a 2-10 team, I talked about our process on how we're going to practice and what the expectations were and what the off-field expectations were about attitude and effort and academics and the whole thing, that we're going to put it together to get better. And I said, when we're 1-8, it's going to be the same as when we're 8-1, because that's the process of daily improvement. And I think our guys have embraced that, and it's my responsibility to make sure I don't waver from that as these expectations kind of change. And we had college game day here, we've had Fox Big Noon kickoff. Those are things that have never happened. And boy, the energy and excitement that has happened off of that is really exciting. I've told our guys, to have those things happen again, there has to be a daily focus of what needs to be done today. People have mentioned, you guys have talked about the playoffs or something. Well, that's really flattering. But if we're talking about games that aren't even on our schedule yet, we'll never see the light of day on that ever happen. We'll be watching it with you guys probably. So, we've got to stay the course, and it is something that we're proud of. The other thing is, you had mentioned our team and our records and things like that. And our first season, we were the youngest Power Five football team in the country, third youngest overall. And now you talk about some that we went through the growing pains, but a majority, especially at the skill positions, are still here. We've maintained the roster, and I sure hope they get a chance to reap the benefits of their loyalty and hard work.
Let's talk about one of those skill positions, because college football is now so much dominated by the quarterback position. While you've got a great running back room, let's be honest, but the quarterback position is what dominates conversations. And you've got a great quarterback in Jalon Daniels. He's had 2 seasons that have been interrupted a little bit by injury. How do you, firstly, this offseason, how have you been able to integrate him back into the team while also trying to protect him ahead of the season?
Jalon, if you ever get a chance to meet the young man or interview him, you're going to find out that he's a very humble, confident guy, but a great personality and a smile that lights up the room. And not just because he's really talented. I just feel bad for the young man just because of the unfortunate things that have happened. And he has stayed the course and loyal to his teammates and try to help where he can. And we've been cautious. We were cautious to try to implement them in different ways on throwing programs, what snaps in practice, different things that were going to happen. And it was a gradual process in spring, very limited, to be honest with you. And then we came into fall camp and we're going to try to do very similar things. And by the third practice, he was doing everything with and he has not missed a beat of anything. There hasn't been any load management type issues. He has taken everything and then some what we want. And I was jokingly saying that at our media days here yesterday that I named him the starting quarterback. And then I heard somebody say that I was waiting this long to do it because he wasn't healthy yet or something. And I was just trying to make a joke, but my sense of humor isn't very good, I guess. So I'm excited to see number 6 back on the game field and for our fans and for the nation to see him play.
Yeah, I think anyone who follows college football is excited to see a healthy, a fully fit Jalon Daniels, apart from maybe opposition defensive coordinators. We've talked about external pressure, so we'll just throw a little bit of external pressure in towards the end of this interview. With a full, healthy Jalon Daniels, with those skill players that we talked about a little bit earlier, what can the team achieve this year, Coach?
Well, as coach would know on there, he's talking about probably his team. You know what? We may have this issue is that we have so many returning skill players, and we have 2 really good defensive corners that have been really good players for us as well. Everybody likes talking about them on fans and bar talk and whatever and message boards, but you win games and you win championships in the offense and defensive lines. And for us to be the team we want to be, we got to make sure. I think we have the units that can help us go far. I really do. But we're going to have to go out and prove it. And we have some guys that are going to get their first extended playing time in some spots here in these first few games. That said, again, the weapons are there. The experience is there in some spots. I've kind of said, why not us? But it is, this conference has proven to have the closest games in the Power 4 conferences last year. It's somebody's going to surprise somebody from the jump. And like I say, I know we've got to get through our non-conference, but like Neil Brown's team at West Virginia is one that flies under the radar, and he's an excellent coach. Matt Campbell at Iowa State. It is going to be really interesting to see what happens. But I like where our Kansas Jayhawks are as we approach this season.
I'm glad you brought that up, Coach, because we talked about this just a couple of weeks ago about how the Big 12 is probably the most open conference of all of the conferences. So, well, we wish you all the very best for this season. We know you're about to get. Actually, I'd like to stay on and see a head coach get kicked out of a meeting room, but that's a brave person. But we've run out of time. We really do appreciate you taking the time out to come and speak to us, because we know this close to the season it must be hectic. And we all wish you the very best for the season ahead, and we hope to see you in the playoffs.
Well, thank you guys. And I tell you, George, thanks for asking. And I'll say this, between whatever your time schedules are, if there's any desire, if you feel this was worth it for all of you, I'd be glad to make the time, because I think it's great for college football. Hopefully it's great for everyone with you that's following this. And if it can help us all, I'd be glad to do it again.
Well, you can guarantee that'll happen. You might regret that point. Thank you, Coach. We do appreciate that, and it's been awesome to have you on as our guest.
All right, thank you, and rock chalk.
Absolutely, thank you.